O tēnā koe, e te rangatira, te awhiroa mihi nui ki a koe hoa. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy life, away from your whānau, to join me on the podcast, bro. It's nice to sit alongside you.
O tēnā koe, nā ka te honore, e haere whakita mai ki tēnei wāki. O Aotearoa atu.
Tēnā koe.
Sure.
Mean brother. Hey, te awhiroa, just having a kōrero off camera, it seems like you've walked a pretty dynamic path in your life. A little bit of DJing, a little bit of bouncing in your day. A lot of te reo Māori woven in there, and technology as well. He pāpā, tāua, you're a dad just like I am. Really keen to understand some of the key experiences in your past that have shaped the man sitting next to me today. So tell me a little bit about that, bro.
That's a deep one.
It's a deep one. We'll start deep.
I like to describe myself as a complex character with a rich backstory.
Complex character, rich backstory.
That's the one, bro.
Tell me about that.
I grew up here in Ōtautahi. Grew up here in Brighton, Te Awhiroa Kuka Sweet. Lived there for about 18 years before moving to Wellington for a brief spot, and then back here. I started going to school at Te Whakapumo, and then left there when I was quite young. Went through a couple of schooling systems, and then eventually ended up at Ōtautahi High School.
Whaitihi ma? Was it kind of era?
No, actually, didn't go into the whānau unit, ended up going mainstream.
Oh, yeah.
And had a lot to do with the performing arts there. Shout outs to my mentor, Mr. Robert Gilbert, or McG as we called him.
McG.
McG.
What a name.
Got that from a show we watched, Summer High Time.
Oh, yeah. Mr. G.
Mr. G.
He was the performing arts teacher.
That's the one, bro.
Oh, he's a crack up.
Or as all the Māori kids call him, just, Mr.
Mr.
Or Mr. G. I, in a lot of my time at Aranui, really got into performing arts. It shaped a lot of the way I view the world, the way I write, the way I interact with things. Got a lot into the world of Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
Did a lot around that, traveled to the Wellington Nationals, saw the Shakespeare Festival, won a few awards, got to travel over to the Globe.
Cool.
In London.
Is that big?
Yeah, it's still big. Like, it's still a big toku that I hold in great esteem at this point in my life.
Yeah.
Even though it was sort of, back in 2006.
Yeah.
It's still something which I hold quite near and dear to my heart as an experience that shaped me.
Did you go with a group?
Yeah, went with a group of about 22 people.
All from Aranui or from all over the motu?
All over the motu.
Cool.
There was a process we got picked where you go to the Shakespeare Festival in Wellington. You go for like 48 of you go for like a week, kind of like intensive, where you do lots of stuff around Shakespeare, and then 22 of you get picked to go over to London. You do workshops at the Globe. You visit Stratford-upon-Avon.
Wow.
Where old Wiremu Tautau lives and lived and died over there, and you get to visit his grave and everything. They do it every year, but the year that you go always feels quite special.
Of course.
And it shaped a lot of my journey going forward from that point into studying at the New Zealand Drama School.
Was that based in Ōtautahi?
In Wellington.
In Wellington. That's how you end up in Wellington.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Te Whakaari. So at Te Whakaari, I did a lot of mahi there, but it's probably the point in my life that I realized that while I did love performing arts, it probably wasn't the right time. So I ended up coming back to Christchurch.
Why was it not the right time?
I was very young. At the time that I studied at Te Whakaari, they dropped the age from an entry level of 20 down to 18. When I went there, I went straight from high school. So I didn't have any skills about sort of looking after myself, living by myself, interacting with like a whole different world. From there, because before that it had just been, living at my mum's, living with my parents, having everything there for me.
I suppose you kind of take a lot for granted. It's not until you kind of move out of that world where all of a sudden you have to kind of go and do everything on your own, you realize, how much, maybe not necessarily that you took for granted, but how much more you have to make up just to kind of get back to base level.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock, actually.
Yeah.
Huge shock to the system. And then I ended up leaving Te Awhiroa just because couldn't hack it, came down here and just tried to build a bit of a different life for myself.
Miss that world?
I do, actually. I do miss it every now and again. I did a bit of work recently with Te Awhiroa.
Awesome.
Back in 2019, that helped me kind of reconnect. And it was a bit of a healing journey for me because it had been so long since I'd been at Te Awhiroa. I was kind of questioning myself as to whether I still had that kind of thing in me.
Yeah.
And going to Te Awhiroa and working there with the rōpū for the Māori theatre tour, or the Māori around all the stalls and everything, helped validate the fact that while I don't use these skills very often, they're still there, they're still inherent, and it's still something that I'm good at.
Yeah.
You know.
Cool. So you moved back down to Ōtautahi.
Yep.
Try to rebuild something new.
Yeah. Around that time, I realized that my biggest passion, other than everything else that I do in my life, is being a father.
Yeah.
I met my son's mother. We had my son. And around that time, I kind of explained it to people as being, when you know you're going to become a father, or when you get the news, your entire world shifts into not being about you anymore. And it changes the way you view the world. I went from being a person who I'm just living for myself, and I'm doing this and doing that, and not really thinking too much about anything, but just trying to survive.
And enjoy life.
And enjoy life, yeah. And then as soon as you find out you're going to be a father, your entire world shifts and be like, oh, what kind of values am I going to instill on my son or my daughter? At the time, didn't know. What kind of values am I going to instill on him? Because I know for a fact that he's just going to sponge off me.
Yeah, of course.
He's going to want to be me. He's going to, see me as the be all and end all. So I had to shift my entire worldview at that point into, what are the things I want to instill in my son? What are the values that I want to give to him? And it fueled me in a lot of my drive to try and reclaim my little Māori, trying to reclaim some of the values that I'd lost, that I learned from my parents, and try and build something for myself in terms of what things do I care about? What things do I want to give him? How do I want to be a parent? How do I want to, when he's older, deal with all these like very intricate things that has to do with being a father? And that became my passion.
Yeah, and there's no playbook for it, eh?
There's really not. I was like trying to, I talked to my dad, I talked to everyone, and I realized that it's just like a lot of it is just flying by the seat of your pants and just trying to figure it out. And
I think we also probably rely or lean into some of our own experiences. So whoever our male mentors were, father figures, whatever, they end up becoming our default. Unless we consciously go and do something different, then we end up kind of just repeating, what was done to us or what was taught to us. That's why those influences are so important. Every now and then someone will make like the conscious decision to, maybe break the cycle if it's a negative influence, or to try and do something different. But if you're not consciously thinking about it, then you end up often just repeating what your father figures, your uncles, or maybe coaches or teachers or fathers taught you, eh? So you talked about reclaiming that Māori worldview. You talked about Te Reo Māori. At that stage, were you speaking Māori? Obviously you had some time at Whakapumo, so you knew the basics.
Yeah.
But did you feel like you kind of lost some of it because how old are you at this stage?
At this stage, I was probably about 23, 24.
Okay. Sweet.
I at this stage, new bits and pieces. My brain definitely had the wiring for it.
Yeah.
From being a whakapumo, but a lot of that fluency had been lost to me.
I was the same, bro. Like when I left, I was at Ōtautahi until the end of intermediate, and then I went off to mainstream to try and pursue a career not in Shakespeare but in footy. Tried to be an All Black.
Oh, shit.
Stopped growing, became slower. Figured out pretty quickly it wasn't for me. But over those sort of 5 years, I made some great friends and learned some really valuable skills. But one of the major cost of that was I wasn't speaking Māori every day. So yeah, the hard wiring was still there, but like any kind of tool, it gets a bit blunt over time if you're not using it. And so I had a similar journey. I had to go back and sort of reclaim a lot of that reo, not so much the tikanga and the values, because that never gets lost. I think that's always there. But the reo certainly had to work pretty hard on that. It sounds like you had a similar sort of journey. You had to go back and really work on it.
Yeah, I think the first step was I got a job working on Taku FM.
Cool.
As a radio DJ.
Yep.
Really enjoyed that job. Loved it. I love sound production. I love speaking on the radio. A really cool job. But one of the things that they encouraged us to do was to learn Māori, because for bilingual radio show. And that kind of kicked off my journey into, no, we're getting into this now. We need to, strap up, strap in, get the reel down. And while I was there, I met a fellow who was like, why don't you go and study at Puna Wānaka?
Cool.
So I was like, okay, let's get started. And that journey was really important to me in realizing how different mainstream schooling is to learning in a Māori way. I realized when I was in high school, a lot of my time there was just thinking that I was stupid, or that I was slow or dumb, or didn't understand things.
Was that your experience?
Yeah.
It surprises me because, as someone who, I went to Christchurch Boys for my high school years, and I'd heard of Shilawin, the festival. I always thought that was for the smart kids. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't think I was worthy of being in that kind of group. So the fact that you were there, and not only just there and participating, like you were in that kind of group that went all the way over, right? And you got to see the globe and so on. And so it surprises me that you sort of doubted your intellect, or that you didn't think that you were that smart.
Yeah, well, because I didn't really view Shakespeare as something that was kind of like high and intellectual.
Have I got it wrong, or like
it might just be a perspective thing,
right? Okay.
Like when I grew up, like everyone was kind of like, all those like fancy words, alpha-lee and stuff like that. And I kind of looked at it as like everyone was like, it's like math and science and these kind of things, the kind of things that make you intellectual.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just doing Shakespeare, it's like, oh, cool, you're doing Shakespeare. But it still didn't make me feel essentially like I was like
intelligent,
yeah.
So your experience of high school was, I'm not really that smart.
Yeah, it was. I know some fancy words.
Yeah.
And I'm learning some fancy words, but in terms of just like overall intelligence, probably not that smart.
So then going back and learning te reo and te ao Māori and what you described as sort of a Māori way, what different perspective did that give you about yourself?
It made me realize that a Māori worldview, or even just reclaiming and reconnecting with te ao Māori, makes you feel like you're actually, it gives you confidence. It gives you confidence to be able to interact with the world and be like, I know how this works now. I know how to learn things. I know how my mind works. I know that this is one way of doing things and this is another way of doing things, but my way of doing things, the Māori way, is something which makes me feel confident to be able to say, I'm learning things and I'm intellectual and I'm writing things and I'm doing essays and researching, but in a way which feels comfortable and meaningful to me.
Was there a moment, was there a particular research project or a moment that you can recall where you were like, it just clicked? Like what was the experience that kind of opened your eyes to that?
Probably, I did an essay once where I was writing about the differences in the way that Māori interact with PTSD.
Okay.
I did a essay and I did some research on the way in which toa, when they go off to the pakanga, transfer themselves from being in a whānau space into being in like a toa space.
Man.
Yeah.
That'd be really interesting. I'd be interested and keen to learn about that.
Yeah. I am still interested to this day, but I'm still kind of learning, picking up bits and pieces of knowledge.
Oh, we all are. Yep.
Yeah. The basis of what I learned is that there is a process around when you go to war, around changing the way your mind works and your body works into something of, I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to do maybe some really horrible things, and preparing your mind for that, going out, doing those things, but then coming back and spending time reconnecting with being, if you're in at a pā, reconnecting with being like part of the whānau, being around tamariki, being around people you love and care for, because it requires a different mindset.
Of course.
Which was a thing that I was like, it actually got me really into researching all these different facets of how our tipuna dealt with these kinds of things.
Yeah. And what was their process? Was it karakia? Was it meditation? How did they? Because that's a massive shift to go from going to war and doing, like you said, horrible things, hurting people. Also, there's a very real possibility that you might die. That mind shift from moving out of that space, returning home, reconnecting with the community and falling back into that world, it's a major shift. So how did they do it?
From my knowledge, they would, on the way out to war and on the way in, would spend a long period of time separated and isolated.
Okay.
And during that time, be reminded through karakia, through kōrero, through pūrākau, of the things they needed to do to be in that mindset. If you're coming back into a whānau space, you're isolated in a whare, and there is a tohunga who comes in, karakia, kōrero, pūrākau, and through that process reminds them of the things they need to do to be in that space. The way I see it in terms of transferring that to like a modern world space is that if you are going through sort of like PTSD or something like that, putting yourself in a space in which you know is safe, and then surrounding yourself with people who are able to affirm who you are as a person, and being able to disconnect that from your
past or whatever, wherever you're stepping out of.
Yeah.
And I suppose remind you maybe of how important you are and what your role is and how valuable it is. Is it that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there is a sense of care in that, and being able to affirm yourself and who you are, and disconnecting yourself from those things and being like, this is a part of who I am, but it doesn't have to be everything that I am, kind of thing.
Yeah. I've always sort of I've thought long and hard about that idea of you are what you do, or you're not necessarily what you do. So just because you maybe go off to pakanga, to war, do some horrible things, kill some people, whatever, because you did those things, does that necessarily make you that person, or is it a part of you, or is it just something that you did, but actually you are a totally different person? Like, I mean, it's one of those big, questions that I kind of sit with every now and then. But I guess if you that could be quite confusing if you don't have a good process and a good tikanga to sort of step through to reintegrate you back into the community, eh?
Yeah, and it's definitely something that like I feel like our tikanga really understood and really said like, you know, this is something we need to do and we need to create a process around it.
You're clever, man.
A lot of it obviously is like just trying to sort of, some of it is theory and some of it is like research, but on the whole, I think the basis of how it works is definitely there. Yeah.
So going through that process really, I guess, opened up your eyes to another worldview, or it gave you a different perspective, maybe?
Yeah, it definitely changed the way that I started to view my own life and my own values, the way that I interacted with being a father, and the way I approach situations, instead of just kind of reverting to things that I just learned or that were just like knee-jerk reactions to things. I instead kind of started to look at the whole thing from the perspective of how do my tikanga deal with this? Sometimes I don't have the answer, and that's fine. But sometimes I can look at that situation and go, how is it that my tikanga deal with this situation, which I usually deal with it in maybe like a Pākehā way, or maybe like a way that's just like kind of inbuilt into my
natural,
personality. But how do I interact with this in a Māori way? And it's still a question I ask myself when I'm sort of going through difficult situations, or I don't know how to deal with something. And then sometimes I'll be like, what am I keeping to do? And there won't be an answer. And I'll just have to kind of like wing it.
Yep. But that's where you start.
Yeah.
I wonder what my tupuna would do in this situation, or, you know. Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. And so that obviously kicked off a new sort of phase in your life where te reo Māori, because language, culture, they're two sides of the same coin. You can't really go too far down the line learning about a culture without, you know, eventually having to learn a little bit of reo along the way, and vice versa. So that obviously kicked off a new sort of chapter in your life where te reo Māori, te ao Māori, tupuna, inspiration kind of kicked in. And that led you to, I guess, where we first kind of got to know each other, which is e te whānau back in te ao Māori, kura kaupapa. So tell me about, you know, you've talked a little bit about being a pāpā and really wanting to embed good values. What are those values? What have you learned?
Hey, yeah, that's a huge question. I've spent a lot of time kind of working on them, but only recently I've kind of embedded them and started to really try and embody them a bit more. Especially with my son, I try to, one of my core values is around being kind and approaching situations, not from the perspective of reacting, but trying to approach every situation with the assumption that everything is okay, everything is fine. If it's not fine, then react accordingly. But I try and teach my son to, you know, if he's dealing with a hard situation at school, always approach from the area of being humble, being kind, trying to understand why that person is acting that way towards you. You know, are they jealous? Are they angry? Are they trying to get something from you? Are they dealing with something at home that, you know, they haven't dealt with and their parents haven't dealt with, but they're trying to put that on you? Trying to understand that first, and then if you do need to do something about it, absolutely do something about it. But don't just assume that everyone is just, you know,
out to get you. So aroha, and I guess trying to find the
my earring has fallen off. I apologize.
It's point. All good.
Yeah.
So trying to deal with it from a place of aroha, I guess, and humility, that humari.
Yeah. Aroha, manaki.
Trying to see the best in the situation and giving the person the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Obviously, the flip side to that is if you do need to deal with the situation, then stand up for yourself.
Of course.
You know, don't back down. Be assertive. One of the things I struggled with, which I always try and look at my own life and try and think about the things that I would want my father to say to me in that situation.
Okay.
So if I was like coming home from school and I'd had a hard day, like what are the things I would want my father to say to me? And one of the things I struggled with when I was growing up was being assertive. I grew up in a world where everybody was growing up in these very harsh environments. You know, it's sort of like the early 90s, and people are going through like a tough time.
Yeah.
And I, in contrast, grew up around a family who were very open with their emotions, very open with each other. They just wanted to, you know, hug people and show people aroha. And that clashed a lot, especially in the schools I went to and the people I interacted with.
Do you think it made you, did people think it made you soft or something? Or they didn't think you had the same perspective and worldly experiences as they had, so therefore you didn't understand? Or why did it clash, do you think?
To some degree, I think that's correct. I think that from their worldview, they had to be hard to survive.
Got you.
And then the only way they knew how to interact with other kids at school was probably in that way.
Yeah.
The only way I knew how to interact with people was being soft.
Right.
And so that clashed a lot. I subsequently had to learn that the hard way. And then these days, becoming a father, I had to unlearn it again.
So you saying you went from being soft to the polar opposite. You need to be really, really hard. Were you ever violent?
No.
Just assertive.
Just assertive. Just not even hard in a quintessential kind of way of just being like,
Yeah. You felt like you had to harden yourself.
Yeah.
To survive.
Harden my own kind of sense of fragility and vulnerability to be able to survive.
And then as an adult going, I got that wrong.
Yeah.
I need to unlearn that. What I had was actually okay.
Yeah. And in some ways that kind of stuffed me up because I was like, it went against everything that I am. Right. You know, I was kind of trying to push against the core of who I am. And my core was like, that's not going to work, bro.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So kindness, aroha, humility, manaakitanga, those are all really core to, you know, the type of father that you are trying to be and the types of values that you're trying to instill in your tama.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I try to help my son be proud of who he is as Māori.
Awesome.
But also to take some pride in who he is, just like appearance-wise, physically. Teaching him about the context in which he can be this way. So like, you know, if you're going to a certain situation where you need to dress up, absolutely dress up. Go hard. You know, take out all the stops, dress up to the nines, but know the context in which it's okay to relax. Yeah. Because I find sometimes if I'm dressing up, I dress up just because I want to feel. It's almost like, you know, putting on a suit of armor. You go into a situation, I don't know what to expect. I'm just going to dress up and put on my suit, see how it feels. And then as time goes on, you start to relax and just relax into who you are. And, you know, you might, you know, have a sleeveless shirt every now and again going on. So I try and teach my son that kind of pride in himself, pride in who he is. I try to give him a bit more. Some people kind of think of it as giving more freedom. I like to not kind of dictate a lot of his life. I like to let him make his own mistakes because I feel like it's important for him to learn those consequences himself. I think it's important to give him all the information. So if he's going to go do something which I don't agree with, I'll be like, cool. this is all the information that I can give you on the subject. This is all my experience. This is everything that I know. Now you have that information.
Do you tell them what you think? Do you make it known that, hey, look, this is the information, this is my experience, this is everything I know about the situation, and this is also why I don't think this is a good idea? Do you tell them that part, or do you leave that part out?
I tell them more what my views are on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
and then let him make a decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like, that's up to you. You make the decision.
If it goes badly, are you there to catch him when he falls?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of people wouldn't. Like, I think, you know, when if someone goes against what you advise, it's really easy to let them fall and go, oh, well, told you so. I warned you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it does take a certain kind of person to be like, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah.
And then they go and do it anyway. And you're like, I'm still going to be here when this all comes crumbling down. I think that's unique. I don't think it's unique to being a father, but I think it's a pretty important role of a father.
Yeah. I think there will be a time when, you know, in his life when I stop catching him. And that's going to be an important lesson for him.
How old is he?
14.
14.
But at this time in his life, I think it's important to know that there's someone to catch him.
Of course.
Especially as he's navigating the world of being a teenager.
All right, man. I think about how hard it must be today 14 was hard for me. And I just think about all of the other things that are going on in the world now that make being 14 even harder.
Oh, yeah.
I got a 12-year-old kōtiro, 10-year-old tama, 4-year-old kōtiro, and I just think about, man, it's going to be tough in a few years when they actually have to start making some of the decisions that I was making as a teen with all of the other, especially technology, things that are going on.
My experience of like being a teenager was just like calling your mate on the phone. And you had to be very specific with the time that you were meeting them and organize that all. And
my memory of that, bro, is like going to the movies. And like mum or dad dropping me off at the movies, and I'd have to run in, ask the person at the counter how long the movie was, and they'd be like, it's 98 minutes or whatever. And then you'd have to like look at the time, go start time plus 10 minutes of ads plus running time minus the credits because I'm not going to stay for those. Run outside and be like, right, the movie's going to finish at 2:25. Can you be here at 2:20? And like, you know, I mean, whereas nowadays you don't have any of that kōrero. First of all, you already know because it's on the internet. Secondly, you just message them or call them, right? Or call an Uber or whatever.
You just drop them off and you're like, okay, text me when it's done.
Exactly. So I know, like, in fact, that's a good wee segue into something else I'm really interested about when it comes to you, bro, which is technology. I know you've been big in the technology space, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're passionate about trying to use technology maybe to promote our culture, te ao Māori, te reo Māori. Have I got that right or not? Tell me about that.
No, absolutely. In my past line of work, I worked with an amazing organization called Te Pāpā Matiiko, who are tied to native tech native tech in Ōtautahi.
Native tech is a business.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was like a category of tech that I wasn't aware of.
Oh, no. I mean, can be. If you want.
Yeah. Okay, kapai. So they're tied to native tech, Yep.
Based in Ōtautahi. So a lot of our mahi was around trying to saturate and engage with the digital space from a Māori viewpoint. Like, how can we make all these spaces and all these things that traditionally, because in my view, we as Māori tend to find that space a little bit scary at times because it's something which we haven't interacted a lot, and because it's something I'm passionate about, I'm like, I love this and I love this. How can I like put them together?
100%. That's what I've tried to do for my adult life. You know, because I love business, I love working in hospitality. I'm also very passionate about te reo and te ao Māori, and it's just been a constant trying to figure out how do I bring as much of this together as possible. And you know, that's a little bit about what this is. You know, so I get it.
So I first found out about it because I'm a huge gamer.
Okay.
Absolutely huge gamer. I grew up playing Halo with all my mates. Grew up playing World of Warcraft. Currently, I'm a competitive Tekken player.
Oh, really?
Well,
What does a competitive Tekken player involve?
well, you got your casuals, obviously. So your casual Tekken player just kind of plays it maybe like every now and again with your mates who just like.
But it's online?
Yeah, it's online.
Yeah.
Maybe like you mash a few buttons, maybe you go online and you kind of like, know a few little things here and there. For me, being a competitive player means that you immerse yourself in the kind of deeper meaning of how the game works. So you're no longer just kind of playing it casually. You're like, okay, you're studying, characters, you're studying like frame data, you're studying.
What's frame data?
No, frame data, bro.
Or is that a whole nother podcast?
We got another hour for that one, bro.
Okay, cool.
You're studying like plus and minus frames, you're studying all this kind of stuff.
Damn.
And you just get into it a bit more in depth. I started playing Tekken 7 in COVID era.
Okay.
Because when COVID hit and we're all in lockdown, I was like, what are the 2 things I can do that will take up the most time? And they were learn how to play Tekken and watch One Piece.
And watch what?
One Piece.
What's that?
Anime.
Oh.
You know anime?
No, bro. I mean, I know what anime is.
Yeah.
I'm aware that it's this massive kaupapa. It's just not something I've ever dipped my toe in the water and kind of experienced, but I know it's huge.
Okay, bro, keep it that way, bro. Keep it that way.
Okay. Fair
You don't need that in your life, bro.
If you don't have any time, then don't do that. Okay, kapai. So One Piece and Tekken.
Yeah, One Piece and Tekken. One Piece is an anime that it's not the longest anime ever, but it's well known for having like a huge amount of episodes.
Okay.
At the time that I watched it back in 2020, it had 875 episodes.
Wow.
And I believe it's now up to 1170 or something.
And an episode is what, half an hour?
Yeah, half an hour, 20 minutes.
So it takes a long time to get through it all.
So I started just watching it and just all through lockdown, just watch One Piece, learn how to play Tekken.
Okay.
Started on Tekken 7. And you kind of start learning just the basics, so like how combos work, how they all string together. I went to my first major tournament in Christchurch in 2021. So they usually have it around April. And for me, it wasn't about going in there and trying to win, because there's all these other players who've been playing since like the 90s.
That long? I know it's been around for a long time. So I remember Tekken. I was never very good at it. But I remember it when I was younger. So the fact that it's still alive now and is still crushing means that it must be on, I don't know how many iterations, but it's massive, right?
Yeah. The one that everyone kind of connects with is Tekken 3.
Okay.
It's the one that was really dynamic. It had all these really cool characters. Obviously Tekken 1 and 2 were good, but they didn't have as much character and relatability that Tekken 3 had. So when everyone says like Tekken, they're like, I remember playing Tekken 3, and then you'd play like Eddie and just like mash the X and circle buttons.
Actually sounds familiar.
Cool. I'm guilty.
We actually went to a tournament though, a competitive tournament.
Yeah. So at this time I was playing Tekken 7. I was maining. So maining is when you stick to one character and that becomes the character you're known for.
Okay.
So I was maining Armor King, who's a wrestler. Just from my background of wrestling, I really enjoy it. So maining Armor King, and I went to the tournament, and my goal wasn't to win or to do well. My goal was to just absorb as much knowledge as I can from all the different players there. So I've been kind of playing and attending tournaments where I can since then. The last one in Ōtautahi was probably Ōtautahi Onslaught, which was in April. Didn't compete, just as the current Tekken landscape is a little bit all over the show.
Okay.
There's a lot of lobby going on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With the game or with the players?
With the game.
Okay. What's wrong? Like what? Is the tech not working or something?
No. Well, the reason it's going sideways is that Tekken 8 released recently. It's been out for about a year and a bit. When it released, it was kind of in a good spot. There were little like adjustments that probably could have been made to turn it into a better game, but they released what we call the Season 2 patch, which within what we call the FGC, which is the fighting game community, became notorious for being a terrible, terrible patch. So Probably the main gripes with it were that it took away a lot of the identity of the characters. So each character had really, really interesting ways that you could interact with them to make them unique to your play style or who they are as characters. But everything just became very, not balanced, but very like samey.
Yeah.
So like
Mediocre?
Yeah, mediocre. There we go. So every character has like this thing, and every character has this thing, and every character has this thing.
So there wasn't anything unique about Armor King or anyone else. Or
So
is
like,
he still a character, or is he all the way back in the past?
Oh, he's just been announced recently.
He must be pretty old now.
Oh, we're actually on the second iteration of Armor King 2.
Oh,
yeah. The first, this is deep lore, bro. This is deep lore.
Okay.
The first Armor King got, just because it's an ongoing story. The first Armor King died, and the second Armor King took over. So we're on Armor King number 2 now.
Gee. I didn't think we were going to go in this direction on the podcast, but it's interesting. It's interesting.
It's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
In terms of how I use this in Te Ao Māori, a lot of my mahi at Te Papatipu Matihiko was around interacting with tamariki and getting them into like a digital space, and then using that to get them to connect with specific things. A really good example that I use is there's a Fortnite game building system. Obviously not as beefy and not as intense as a lot of the ones the professionals use, but it's really, really good for like an entry level kind of game building system.
Okay.
And in that you can you have a map and you can create your own buildings, and you can shape the land and just make lakes and rivers. And
this is in Fortnite.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is a software you can get which is adjacent to Fortnite.
Gotcha.
Which you can use to kind of build games of your own.
Awesome.
But using the kind of assets that Fortnite has.
Okay.
So we would work on them to work on stuff like pūrākau, like whakapapa, anything like that which they need to connect with. And then use that in-game to help them build what it looks like. So you'd say, what does a whakapapa entail? You have your maunga, your awa, your waka, your marae, this thing. And then go into the Fortnite builder and be like, okay, build something. Build me a maunga, build me an awa.
Awesome.
Show me what it looks like, Usually we would go on Discord and we'd have like their camera up and I'd sort of show them how to use it, how to build it, how to interact with it, so that we've got, what is if you're from Ngāti, what does your maunga look like? Does it have like over here?
Yeah, is it a tall, sharp one? Is it kind of like flat? Yeah,
is it like moa where it's like flat on the top?
Yeah.
Like down the sides, and then whatever it looks like, build it for me.
Yeah.
And so we would spend time with tamariki, and sometimes tamariki would like go a bit off and they'd be like, oh, I want to build like a massive comet coming from the sky and like a massive pirate ship. I'm like, okay.
It's cool.
Yeah. Do that on the offside.
Yeah, that's your homework.
Yeah. Homework. So stuff like that we would use to interact with Te Ao Māori, or we would use to be like, build me a pūrākau, show me Maui slowing down the sun, show me tāwhaki, or kupe with a whirlpool.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And people loved it.
Yeah, a lot of the kids got a lot out of it because they didn't get a lot of that in kura, or they just weren't engaging at kura. We tried and focus on tamariki who just weren't really engaging with their mahi at kura. We worked on trying to find a way to get them engaged. And you kind of like sort of bring them in with the promise of Fortnite and then keep them there.
And then trick them.
Yeah.
Into pūrākau and whakapapa.
Yeah. No. That's it. I said, play some Fortnite for half an hour. Okay, cool. Yeah. And we're going to do some whakapapa.
Yeah. No, awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. And so you're still doing that mahi, or have you sort of shifted into something different?
No, I've shifted into my passion at the moment, which is mental health.
Mental health.
And sharing a lot of my knowledge and mental health kaupapa with at Hamilton Hospital.
Awesome.
So a lot of that is just around helping our tangata, our Māori whānau with their own issues going on and reconnecting them with Te Ao Māori as best I can.
So using Te Ao Māori values whakaaro Māori as a way to improve people's mental health and get them into a state where their hauora is a bit more balanced. Is that sort of what you're trying to do?
Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of using and adapting healthcare models to work for Māori. You know, the Mehana model, the Rose Pere, Whike model, things like that. But I'm also really passionate about using pūrākau and applying that to my mahi in terms of helping people understand the Māori worldview.
Cool.
People, I think, have, especially if you're not used to being in a Māori environment, tend to view pūrākau as being these kind of like storied myths and legends and things like that. When in fact they are like these really, really in-depth look into how we interact with the world. One of my favorite stories I always like to tell is Mahuika in Maui, because when you're telling it, people are like, oh, that's a cool story and things like that. But if you look deeper into it, it's, as an oral narrative, it's about understanding how Maui experiments with things, like how Tamariki experiment with things.
Of course.
You know, he's putting out all the fires because he wants to see what happens.
Yeah, it's curious.
Yeah, it's curious. A lot of me growing up, you know, you're told like, oh, don't touch that, don't do the thing, don't do this. Whereas hearing how, because I heard that story growing up all the time, but understanding what that means in terms of how to interact with the world is a completely different thing.
What's your biggest sort of couple of takeaways from, because on the surface, Maui goes to Mahuika, asks for fire, and then he just looks like he's been a pest. On the surface. Like if you don't really know what you're looking at, you're like, here's this guy, he's taking these fingernails, there's only 10 of them, so they're a finite resource, and he's throwing them in the water, and he's just been a bit of an egg. That's what it looks like. But what you're saying is that, no, there's so much more to the story.
Oh, absolutely.
So what do you think of some of the takeaways from that kōrero?
I think Māori is definitely a scientist. Or Maui is
scientist.
Maui is definitely a scientist. He's definitely about experimenting and seeing like, because science is definitely about just kind of like poking or prodding and seeing what happens when you do that thing. Sometimes it might blow up in your face. Sometimes it might do something weird. But he's always questioning how the world works and wanting to find out how the world works, which I feel like is definitely something I try and instill into not only my own life, but my son's life. Like, you know, poke things, probe things, figure out how the world works.
Yep. Break it, put it back together.
Yeah. So when he kind of like, he starts to, my understanding of it is that when he takes one of the fingernails and he runs away, it's like looking at it and being like, if I take this back to the pā and I light all the fires, I won't understand how this works. I know that it exists. I know it's in my head. I know that, you know, from A to B, but I don't know where this comes from. So how do I figure out where this comes from? I like the contrast of Maui and tāwhaki, with tāwhaki being around understanding that there has to be boundaries for things and there has to be rules for things. Also, he's just an awesome dude. I mean, like, he shoots lightning from his armpits.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Who doesn't want to shoot lightning?
Yeah, I want that. I want that power.
Hey, he's like Māori Thor. It's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
The way I always talk to people around it is that Maui is the part of you that goes, I want to learn how to build this fire. If I build the fire, what can I do with the fire? Can I like light a stick on it? What can I do with it? Can I, you know, cook things, use it to heat things, boil water? But tāwhaki is the part of you that goes, if I touch the fire, I'm going to get burnt. Right. Don't touch the fire. Look at it, play with it. Don't touch the fire.
That's the boundaries.
Yeah, that's the boundaries.
It's the rational part of your, you know, left and right. You got the irrational, don't touch the fire. Yeah. And over here you're like, but if I did touch the fire, what could I do with it?
It's like, what can I do with this? What fun things can I do?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's how you see that relationship between Maui and tāwhaki. And that particular pūrākau is just an example of Māori being curious.
Yeah, it's just an example. I in my life try to apply it in the sense of letting my son just be curious about things.
Yeah.
And setting boundaries for him and being like, this is the boundary. If you do this, this will happen. Be curious about things, wonder about things, learn about things. Don't close yourself off to experience, but also understand that you need to set yourself boundaries around yourself, around the things you do, around the things you're curious about, because you might get burned.
100%, bro. And I think the final chapter of Māori is when he tries to defeat Hinenui Te Pō, and he fails. And I think that is kind of all of the things that he did, fishing up Te Ika Maui, Mahuika, catching Tamanui Te Rā, all of the wonderful Maui stories, and he's such a mischievous, curious guy. And as Māori, we actually celebrate that kind of nanakia a little bit, mischievous. We actually like that characteristic, that particular characteristic in our tamariki. We encourage it, like you already said. But then at the same time, you are reminded in the Maui stories that eventually he actually pays the ultimate price. He dies. And so it's like, push the envelope, step outside of the box, be curious, be a little bit mischievous. I love that, that part of the kōrero when he goes out with his brothers to fish up Te Ika Maui. He goes to his nan to get some advice. And then after that hui, instead of going back to his brothers and saying, hey, nan told me you've got to take me fishing tomorrow, he hides in the boat, in the waka, in the hull. So even just little moments like that, it's like he knew that in that particular instance, it was better to seek forgiveness later down the track than permission in that moment. And it's like, we have to remember that sometimes in life, when you know it's the right thing to do, and no one else is going to believe in you, at that point, you're like, be Māori. Just hide in the hull of the canoe, seek forgiveness later, figure it out later. Don't ask permission. You know what the answer's going to be. So but if you believe it, like if it's the right thing to do, just do it. Fuck it, who cares? So there's all of those little wonderful hidden gems in those Maui stories, but then I'm constantly reminded, don't push it too far. Because if you just push it too far, like push it, but don't push it too far. Because then you might just pay the ultimate price. And the reason why, ka mate tonu tātou, we still die, is because Maui had an opportunity to defeat Hinenui Te Pō, but he didn't. So know your limits, know when enough is enough, know if this is a hill that's worth dying on, or if you can just let this one go, you can do something different. Those are all real good lessons for our tamariki to learn, and even as adults, we can be reminded of those things. Bro, I've loved this kōrero. I'm really interested to know what's exciting you at the moment. What's in the future that you're kind of excited about, looking forward to?
That's a really good question. I'm at a very interesting point in my life where I've kind of done all the things that I've ticked a lot of things off my list.
That's good.
And I've kind of brought everything and tightened everything up to the point where I've now done everything around me, and I'm just working on myself now.
Awesome.
It's been a long time coming, and I've put a lot of things into my life recently where I'm like, now's the time to really work on myself, on my tinana, on my wairua, on my own kind of things that I need to heal within myself from, whenever in my life. But it's a kind of time where I feel like I can just relax into it a bit more.
You're not in a rush.
Yeah. Like things have stopped being fast. They've stopped being, all at once. I remember when I was, my son was growing up, where everything was just like, make sure he's here, make sure he's here, make sure he's here. Do this. To some degree, there is still like a level of that, and trying to make sure he's okay, and booking, get his appointments and school interviews and taking him to sports and things like that. There is a level of that, but the rhythm of life is much less frantic at this point. And so it's given me the opportunity to be like, okay, what are the things I can work on for myself? So in doing that, I've started, going to the gym. Probably only in like the last 6 months I've started doing that, and already felt a lot better.
Awesome, bro.
Working on my own kind of core values, figuring out what I need to work on in terms of asserting myself. One of the things I struggle with a lot is, I feel like a lot of Māori struggle with, is that thing of like learning how to be humble but not humble. We tend to, as Māori, if we're going to like, interview for a job or something, we tend to kind of undersell ourselves a little bit.
We're taught that humility is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it is.
It is, absolutely.
But then doesn't really serve you well in an interview necessarily. Sometimes it does.
Yeah. Sometimes it's
But how do you find that balance, of being proud or sharing what it is that you can bring to the table, but also remaining humble?
So I'm trying to, at the moment, I'm trying to work on just trying to flex a little bit.
Awesome.
Just trying to flex a little bit. Just trying to like figure out, how much I can flex myself. Trying to push myself out into the world a little bit. Stop kind of being like held in a shell and underselling myself. I think it's an important thing, especially for Te Ao Māori, in terms of like knowing when that's appropriate and how to go about it. I feel like on a marae or on a pōwhiri or in certain contexts, it's really important to stay humble and to be in that space. But I value a lot being able to be confident in yourself and your abilities, and go into a situation and be like, and be a little bit cocky, be a little bit arrogant about it, to a degree, enough so that the person you're interacting with or whatever it is that you're doing understands that you're confident in yourself and you know your abilities and you're not here to muck around.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work on that a bit more in myself because of my history of just not being as assertive as I could be.
Yeah.
And that goes into working on my body and my wairua and being confident in who I am. But yeah, that's my biggest passion at the moment, is be humble, but not as humble as I think I am. Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. I love that. And I think you've a couple of things, like I can, to your first earlier point around slowing down, not being in a rush and working on yourself. You can hear it in your tone of voice. Like you strike me as someone who's feels under control at the moment. You're not rushing. There's no urgency in your voice. You're under control. So you can hear it in your voice, in your body language, in your ahua. I think you're doing well. And then I think the idea of being humble, you're absolutely, and it'll come across on camera. Very, very humble person. But good on you for stepping out of, I guess the comfort zone and getting on camera and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, because you got a lot to share, bro. Just listening to you in the last hour, man, there's so much more that we could have gone into.
Oh, I got stories for days.
Especially those frame rates.
What
was that? Did I get that right?
Yeah, frame data.
Frame data. My frame data. Shit, sorry.
If you want to learn about it.
But you know what I mean? Like, you got a lot there to give. And I think I really admire being in that place where you still value humility, but you're trying to go, do you know what? I got something to add here that's valuable, and I think the world needs to hear about it. It's a hard balance to strike, bro.
It's a really hard balance. I find myself getting a lot of pushback to it at times, where
from other people or from yourself.
So because my thing is that, like, if I go into a space where I know I need to be big, I will fill up that space. And a lot of times I'll do that, and people will sort of get a bit, off-put or a little bit threatened. And I was like, I'm not here to threaten you. I'm just here to fill up the space, and you can either meet me there, or you can, diminish yourself. And I don't want you to diminish yourself.
No.
I want you to meet me on that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, one of the things I've noticed in life is that there's people that I look up to, that I really admire, that are doing things that, I aspire to be able to do one day. in sports or health, fitness or business or just in life. And one of the things I've noticed is that like people who are doing the things that you want to do, in other words, I guess more successful in that particular area of life than you are, in my experience, they don't ever try and diminish you, or they don't ever try and make you feel small. The people that, in my experience, that have tried to make me feel smaller or have pushed back on me or told me don't do that, tend to be the ones that aren't doing it. Like if I'm trying to, like I've never walked into the gym and had like a really strong 40-year-old dad who's just like killing it in the gym ever look down on me for my technique or for my weight or anything like that. It's always, you always get that kind of negative stuff from other people. And so I always think to myself, if someone's having a go at me or pushing back on me, if I'm genuinely not being a dick, because if I'm being a dick, then you've got every right to put me in my place. But I often think no one who's doing better than you will ever talk down to you. It often comes from other people. And I always kind of hold on to that because I'm a pretty aspirational guy as well. And sometimes I share my aspirations with people. A lot of it I keep private or I only share with Jess. But when you do put yourself out there and you do get pushed back, it's usually from people that haven't done it or wish that they had the courage to do what you're doing. And it's easier said than done, but I try and hold on to that and try and think to myself, don't let them get to you.
That's rule number 3, my bro.
What?
Be cool.
Be cool.
Yeah. Rule number 3, be cool. Right after rule number 2, which is mana motuhake.
What's rule number 1?
Rule number 1 is whānau first.
Whānau first, mana motuhake, be cool.
Be cool. I'll tell you the other 7 later.
that sounds like chapter 2, volume 2 of the podcast.
That's the one,
Bro, I've taken enough of your time. I really appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Like I said, taking time away from your whānau, away from your busy life to be here. I've learned a lot. I think you've shared a lot of insight, and I think people will really get a lot out of this kōrero. So mihi nui ana ki a koe, e te tuakana, and I look forward to joining you for rule 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
That's the one, bro.
On the next episode.
Should be good.
Cheers, my brother. Ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi.